Our son is 11, a few steps away from 12. His voice is changing, manly cologne increasing with every sweat-stained shirt, if you know what I mean. And he and his sister currently live in our home rent-free, but not responsibility-free. See, my husband and I believe that able-bodied people should contribute to the home they enjoy. And so the other day, I reminded our son that it was his night to clean the kitchen. And do you know, that joker took his sweet snail time getting in there. And the kitchen was half done once he arrived at the destination. And once again, I sang the same song I have to sing often. If you just do it right the first time, you don't have to do it again. This young brother had the nerve to get an attitude, groaning his way back to the kitchen. Now, the second go round was better than the first. And so I just asked him, son, why didn't you just do what I told you to do? And he responded honestly. He said, and you kind of just got to know the kid. Just picture an 11-year-old, but he's really like 95. But the brother said, because I just didn't want to. Now, I know, because depending on your parenting style, your response could have gone a variety of ways. But on this day in particular, my voice nor my hand rose. Instead, I was convicted of my own moments of, I just didn't want to. Those moments when obedience has felt like punishment instead of purpose. And I think our son was simply putting honest words to our true feelings. Because sometimes obedience just isn't what we want to do. And if we keeping it real, it doesn't always feel good. So can we talk about it? Hey y'all, I'm Senecca, and this is Exhaled Hope, where we have real conversations about faith in the middle of the mess. No hype, no guilt, no pretending we have it all together. Just truth that leaves us with real hope. Doing the dishes, for most people, feels like a cruel task. And probably even more so for children who feel their only responsibility is to eat, sleep, and spend the money they don't work to earn. They don't see the responsibility being built. They don't see that there is growth that's trying to be watered. And even with me knowing all of that from this side of the ask, I can honestly say that I too am very much like my son. Sometimes, when God gives me direction, I just don't want to. Get somebody else to do it. Maybe I won't go where you send me, Lord. Maybe I just got too caught up in the moment at church and when I said yes, and now I just want to change my mind. Because what you're asking of me requires too much. And I have really been thinking about why. Like, why do we resist? Why does obedience to a God who loves us, a shepherd who leads us, who has never once been wrong, who has a track record of all things working out, why does it still feel like something we have to talk ourselves into? And so I think it comes down to a couple of things. Let's call them traps. And I want to call them out by name so that the next time this trap tries to catch us by our disobedient ankle, we can see it and call it out and then correct ourselves. So trap number one is that we want control. We want to obey God, but on our terms. We want to say yes to the assignment, but we got to negotiate the terms and the timeline. And listen, I get it. I completely understand because control can feel like protection. When we're in control, we can predict the outcome, manage the risk. We can protect ourselves from looking foolish or being hurt. But the thing is, control is the enemy of faith. You cannot walk by faith and insist on controlling every step at the same time. Those two things cannot coexist. When God told Abraham to leave his country, his people, his father's house, he didn't give him a Google map. He said, go to a land I will show you. Child, them directions were still pending. Abraham had to move before he had the full picture. And that is still how God operates today. He doesn't hand over the entire blueprint because if he did, we'd be tempted. Actually, saying tempted is being too nice. The truth is, we would try to execute it without him. Control gives us this illusion that we don't need to depend on anyone, including God. And obedience, real obedience, requires us to loosen that grip. Not because God is trying to take something from us, but because he's trying to give us something better than what we can manage on our own. So the first trap is about comfort. The second trap, I believe, is we get caught up in wanting convenience. And this one, I feel like is sneaky because it doesn't always look like disobedience. Because sometimes it just looks like not yet. It looks like when my son was taking his sweet time to get to the kitchen, technically he was moving and heading in the right direction, but with no urgency. We do this with God constantly. We'll do it, just not right now. We're going to wait until the kids are older. I'm really busy at work right now, so once I get done with this project, I'll do it. Or when I'm in a better place financially, yeah. Or when I feel like I'm more ready. You know what? No. When the timing makes more sense for me, then I'll get right on that. Because convenience says obedience should fit neatly into the life I already have going on, this thing that I've already built. It needs to fit into that. But most of the time, from my experience, God's instructions are very inconvenient. And I think that that may be by design because the inconvenience is part of the transformation. When I'm inconvenienced, then I got to stretch myself. I got to move differently. I've got to be intentional about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it because it's not in my normal, convenient pattern. And the stretching that happens when you obey outside of your comfort zone, that's not by accident. And I think that's the point. Because the truth is, and this is something we already know, but we ignore it. The truth is that delayed obedience is still disobedience. I've not known a time personally when God said, Senecca, go do this thing whenever you feel like it. Because most of the time, when I feel like God is telling me to move or to do or to go, it's urgent and immediate. And when God says go and we say eventually, we are still telling God that our schedule matters more than his direction. And the longer we wait, the easier it becomes to convince ourselves that we misheard or that, oh, that moment has passed or that surely he didn't mean it that way. That's not what he really wanted me to do. I think we need to get out of talking ourselves out of our assignments because they're not convenient. Y'all still all right? Okay, can we go on to number 3? All right, the third trap is, y'all, we want comfort. And maybe that check-in was really for me to see if I was all right because this is my issue. And comfort, for me, isn't just a physical ease. And for many of us, it's not. A lot of the comfort is about emotional safety. It's about not wanting to be in situations that require more of us than we feel equipped to give. It's not just about not wanting to be misunderstood or stretched thin or put in a position that we may or may not fail in publicly. Because I feel like we really want to obey God, but from a comfortable distance. We want to say yes to the things that keep us in a familiar territory around familiar people in familiar seasons. But so much of what God calls us to requires us to leave something behind, leave the familiar and the comfortable, the versions of ourselves that we have gotten very comfortable with, very cozy with. And comfort is not a sin. The Bible don't say You can never be comfortable. But comfort becomes a trap when it becomes the standard by which we evaluate our instructions from God. When our first question is not, what does God want? But how does this affect me? Then we may have made comfort an idol. Perhaps. They tell me that the very thing God is calling you out of your comfort zone to do is often the thing that will produce the most fruit in your life and in the lives of the people connected to you. And I think I've talked about this some on here, but I am currently in the most uncomfortable season of my life ever. So I'll report back and let you know if what they told me is true. But here's what I do know for sure. Your comfort is not just about what you see and feel, because your obedience has an audience you can't always see. Spoiler alert, I do feel like they right. And I still don't like being uncomfortable. The last trap is, I think we're very frustrated that obedience is a continuous project. I think this is where a lot of us quietly burn out. We want to do the thing and be done. We want obedience to have a finish line here on earth. We want to be able to say, I did that hard thing, Lord. I was faithful in that season. Let me just rest on that testimony for a while. But what I have learned is that obedience doesn't work like that. It's not a one-time submission. It's a daily practice. And it renews every morning right alongside His mercies. And honestly, that can feel exhausting, especially when you've been doing the right thing for a long time and you don't see the results you expected, or when you've been faithful and it doesn't look like faithfulness is paying off, especially when you're tired and you've already given so much and God is still asking. I want to acknowledge that those feelings are real because some of us are genuinely weary. We're not lazy. This is not about being rebellious. You're just tired. And there is a difference. But here's what I want you to hold on to. Galatians 6:9 says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Not if we perform perfectly, not if we obey without ever complaining, but if we do not give up, then we will get the harvest. Because the harvest is tied to the not giving up. And God knows the difference between someone who is tired and someone who quit. He meets the weary with rest, not condemnation. Look, He met Elijah under the broom tree, and He didn't rebuke him. He fed him, not once, but twice. And then said, the journey is too much for you. He saw Elijah, and He sees you. Obedience being continuous doesn't mean you never get to exhale. It means every time you come back to it, every time you show up again after the hard season and after the groanings, that return is counted. That return is an act of faithfulness. These 4 traps, control, convenience, comfort, and the weight of it being continuous, they are all real. And you are not a bad Christian for feeling them. And we are not the first ones to feel this way. I'm not sure if you know this, but our homeboy Jonah, he didn't want to go to Nineveh. Moses told God he couldn't speak well enough. And then Elijah, he ran into the wilderness and asked God to just let him die. And these weren't weak people. These were people chosen by God who still had moments of, I don't want to. So when my son finally went back to the kitchen, the second time, the right way, he wasn't doing it because he suddenly wanted to. I want to believe, and I do believe, he was doing it because he trusted that even in his frustration, that I wasn't asking him to do something that was bad for him or that was going to harm him. That the ask had a reason. And most importantly, that our relationship was bigger than his feelings in that moment. And I wonder how much of our struggle with obedience is really a trust issue, dressed up as though it's a willpower issue. Because obedience isn't just about behavior. It's really about belief. Do I actually believe that God is good? Do I believe that what he's asking of me, even when it's inconvenient and when it costs me something, or I can't see the full picture, is it coming from a place of love and not punishment? See, we love Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight, or he will direct your paths. But are we reading what it's saying? Because it's not trust in the Lord when it makes sense. Not trust in him when the assignment is real comfortable and cozy, but with all your heart, all your ways, even the inconvenient ones, even the ones that require you to go back to the kitchen. But here's where the hope lives. God is not a parent who sends you back to the kitchen and walks away. He doesn't bark instructions from the couch while he flips channels on the TV and leaves you alone to figure it out. Philippians 2:13 says, "It is God who works in you both to will and to act in order to fulfill his good work or his good purpose." He gives the instruction and he works in you to carry it out. The willingness in itself is something he can grow in you if you let him. You just have to be honest with him, the way my son was with me. Lord, I don't want to, because the goal was never about a perfect performance. It's always been about relationship. The showing up even when you're groaning about it, the returning to the kitchen, because eventually that groaning can turn into gratitude that God sees you and has plans and instructions for you to complete for his purpose and his glory. What an honor. What an honor. And yes, my son finished the kitchen that night. Was it perfect? No. Did it smell like cleaning spray and effort? Absolutely. And I told him I was proud of him. And it wasn't because the counters were spotless, because they weren't, but because he came back and he did what he was told. I believe God says the same thing over us. It's not, "Well done, my perfect, always obedient servant," but "Well done, my faithful one," the one that kept going, the one who was honest about the struggle and showed up anyway. So wherever you are today, whether you're in the first round of half doing the thing, or you're groaning your way back to try again, or maybe you're me last week and you're still sitting on the couch telling God, "I just don't want to," I'm a witness to tell you you're not disqualified. Child, you are in good company. And there is grace that can meet you and will meet you right there. Truthfully, obedience is not the absence of resistance. It's just the choice to move anyway. Hey, y'all. As always, thank you for being here. Be sure to share the podcast, follow us on Instagram and all the places. And if you haven't already, get your Psalm 23 t-shirt. Check out our latest post. There might be a summer sale going on, but you didn't hear that from me. This podcast should go up Memorial Day, and there should be a sale going on. So you might want to check out the Instagram. All right, y'all be good, and I'll see y'all in the next one.